Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Nah, I'm just playing. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. You know I can't be that boring. Man, I appreciate you guys stopping by, taking a look at my video. All of my people in the Philippines. Magandang umaga. Maanyong buntag. Nainbag na bigat. Think of the other ones. Mayad. Na Agahan. Yes. And Masantos ya Kawasan. Yes, got it. All right. It's gonna take me some time before I get it all the way down. You know, I got to get it in here. You know, so I pretty much it's a Philippines versus Philippines game. So you know, just all Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Aklanon, you know. And so anyways, I appreciate you guys stopping by very much. Mabu hi to you guys. I'm Sao Tayo. It's like 8:45 in the morning, so I think all of you guys are pretty much already eating breakfast. You got laggy. Appreciate you guys stopping by very much. If you guys are ready to go, I got Roderick Nava versus Roland Salvador from the 2012 Philippines Grand Final. Let's get rolling. All right, so we got D4, knight to F6. We got C4, E6. Knight comes to F3. Bishop to B4. And so we have a Bogo Indian. We got bishop to D2. Bishop takes D2. Knight takes D2. Knight B takes D2. Because knight F can take D2. We got D5, then we have E3. Now, as you guys probably know, that might play Catalans. This can be a Catalan as well. You know, pretty much when you get to, let's see, after knight to F3, you know, we would see something like D5. G3 would come, and then we would see bishop to B4. Bishop would cover, bishop would take, knight would take, castles, bishop. You know, something like that. I mean, this is a possible scenario that you can see from the Catalan. So as you can see, it's pretty similar, almost identical. So, like I said, we did see E3. We got B6. Bishop comes to E2. We have knight B to D7. We have castles by white. A bishop to B7. Rook comes to C1. We got castles, and then we have A3. And this is the moment you've all been waiting on. It's a Nava Novelty. Finally. I finally found a Nava Novelty. All right, cool. So, you know, like I say, this is the novelty of the game played by Roderick Nava. So, we got it on the board. What we've seen in the past is actually B4. Also, something that's really good is actually C5. Striking in the center first. Because not allowing black to do you know, do that same thing. So after A3, we do see C5 by black, and they get their own strike in. So they are trying to kind of break down this center position. So, you know, A3, even though it was a novelty, it was just a touch slow. It doesn't give the game away by any means, but it wasn't the most direct way to play against the, you know, the pawns in the center. You know, trying to create some space. There weren't any threats of anything coming to B4. So pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5. We see rook coming to E1. We got queen to E7. Pawn takes C5, pawn takes C5. Bishop down to F1. Trying to see if we can't get some type of like open lines going to the queen. Like I always say, guys, you know, putting a rook opposite a queen or a king usually should be pretty beneficial for you. Rook A comes to C8. You have H3. Rook F comes to D8. We have queen to C2. Knight back to F8. We got G3. Knight comes to E6. Bishop to G2. So we've kind of done like a little like fianchetto. We got bishop to E2, then back down, and then up to G2. So we got a little fianchetto situation going on. So, you know, this is probably as close to the Catalan as you can get with a couple of different moves. So we got queen over to C7. And then we have B4. Now, B4 is really hoping that, you know, well, not necessarily hoping, because we are covering with the knight here. But just trying to get some lines open for, you know, these pieces for white, you know, the queen and the rook and stuff like that. So, you know, if we had something like that, you know, we'd see trades. All these trades would occur, you know, something like this. Maybe swinging rook over, something like that. But we don't see that in game. We got B4, and then the pawn comes down to C4. You know, actually giving black a pass pawn, so that is a little bit of a problem. You don't just want to, you know, allow your opponent to get a pass pawn, because they can be very, very annoying, and they can provide a very good anchor, outpost square a supported outpost square for, you know, a knight or something like that, you know, a rook. So we got knight down to b1. So we're planning on blockading this pawn on c3. So we see d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, bishop takes g2, king takes d2. Then we see rook taking d4, and then we see queen to e2. We got h5, knight comes to c3. There wasn't really a threat of, you know, getting a back rank mate, but it's always good to give your king loof because you never know when you might need it. So, you know, practice that definitely. And so we see rook to d3. And like I said before, you know, these passed pawns can be a problem because, you know, now we have a rook just kind of in the throat of white, you know, heavily supported by this pawn. So that's not the best case scenario for you. So we see rook to c2. We got h4. Now, instead of h4, so as you can see, the king does kind of have the little ability to kind of protect in this area. It is going downhill for white. We see g4, and then we see queen to c6 with check, queen to c6 with check. And then you can see the king is getting really, really uncomfortable here. But if we back up, after rook coming to c2, rook to e8 was pretty killer. You know, there is only one move that the queen can make, and that is queen back to f1. And then after queen to c6 with check, we see king to g1, and then h4 would come. And as you can see, the king is in definitely a different position, and he is not able to pretty much, you know, protect all of these different crashing ends that we see. The rook is going to be swinging over. This other rook could possibly swing over, get into the action, and this knight is very, very movable. So something that after back up here. After h4, something that the computer really, really wants to be played is actually knight to e4. And then after something like queen to b7, you got f3. So, you know, it's just, you know, taking the knight away from a defensive position and putting it more in an active and more central position. And then you're always able to kind of, you know, protect here because you do have these pieces protecting the knight. So you don't have any type of rook takes here, stuff like that. So, you know, just a little bit more active. But like I said, we did see h4, g4, queen c6, f3 comes. We got rook to e8. So that does ultimately come into position. We got knight coming to e4. The knight comes to d5. And this is threatening some really nasties because we want to get this knight here and fork these two pieces here so they can both cry. You know, that's always the wish, you know, to make your opponent's pieces cry. We got queen coming to f2. Knight comes to f4. We have king to h2. We have knight takes h3. We have king takes h3. And then we have come to the point in the game that if you want to go ahead and pause it and see what black has in their pocket that is actually played in the game, go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. So for those of you that noticed that white is in a really, really bad position, and they do have this pawn pinned, this knight is pretty much up for grabs. So if you guess rook takes e4, you would be absolutely correct. You know, like I said, this pawn is pinned to the king, so you cannot take back with the pawn, so you're forced to take back with the rook. And after the rook takes, the queen takes, and you have just won yourself a nice juicy pawn. So we see king coming down to g2, and then rook takes f3. And it is actually in this position that Roderick Nava does resign the game. Basically, the situation is you just have too many threats. The queen, like, first and foremost, is threatened with the rook. So, you know, you definitely don't want to take back with the queen because you're going to be dropping this rook down here on c2 with check. And you definitely don't want to block with queen to f2 because then you'll have h3 check, king coming to f3, queen taking on f2 with check, king taking on f2, h2 threatening the queen on h1. After you move the king to g2, you have c3. And unfortunately, for those of you that are familiar with endgames, pawns 4 ranks, 4 files apart, you know, they take care of themselves. I mean, anybody who is familiar with endgames and split pawns, period, or even connected past pawns, you know, they pretty much take care of themselves. You know, it's pretty, you know, when you get into the beginner part of, you know, end games and stuff like that, you start to learn about split pawns, you know, one file apart and 2 and 3, you know, and so it gets pretty easy to calculate, you know, like, you know, if the king is in a position to try to, you know, hold off on. you know, these pawns get to the touchdown end zone. So like I said, it was in this position. Let me get back to that point. It was in this position that Roderick Nava did resign. In lieu of that, there's just no defending this position. So I appreciate you guys stopping by very much. Maraming salamat po. Aking makaibigan. You know, kamusta to you. Let me know how you guys are doing. Put the comments down in the comments section. Let me know if there is any other game that you'd like for me to do. And I always say that if it's something, because Roderick Nava is a fellow YouTuber, if he has done his own analysis on one type of a game that you guys suggest to me, I will not do it. I don't want to step on his toes. So as you guys notice, I'm trying to grab at any games that he hasn't, that he hasn't analyzed himself. So, you know, feel free to give me some stuff, and I'll be working on more languages after I get these couple languages down, so I can try to say, you know, good morning in like all of the Philippines languages. So just give me some time and I got you. But I'll see you guys next time. Appreciate it.